Hey everybody, Scout Crafty here again. It's Wednesday, midweek Wednesday, and want to thank you all for appreciating that axe video we did on Monday. I thought I could be pretty slick, and instead of talking about what we did at the end of the reveal, I just played some cool music behind it, and I thought I'd let you decide whether you like it. And it turns out most of you liked it, but the problem was I had so many questions that normally I would answer when I'm doing a reveal, so I said, okay, I'm sure if there was questions in the comments, I'm sure some of you had the same questions. So we're going to go real quick. I'm going to go through a couple of the questions that you had about that particular video, and then we'll throw in some other stuff. So let's get right to it. Okay, first up, couple people asked, and if you have a couple people asked, and you know there's at least a couple dozen that wanted to ask but didn't in the comments. They said, where did you get the book that showed, you know, where I got all the axes? Remember the axes, the styles of axes? Well, that was from this book here. This is called The Dictionary of American Hand Tools, a Pictorial Synopsis by Alvin Sellens, and you can get this on Amazon for $39. Probably get, I think there was one on eBay for $32. But look how thick this book is. It's really good. The illustrations are nice, and it's well illustrated. Every kind of unusual tools that you don't usually see. It's a good reference book, enjoyable to look through. If you're thinking of, you know, you're getting into collecting tools, or you're interested like I am at what, God, how many planes. This guy wrote a book just on planes, so you can imagine the type of planes that, you know, that he demonstrates in this book here. You know, when you see 4 or 5 pages of like hammers and planes, there's a lot of it. So if you're interested in this type of book, like I said, it's on Amazon, and it's a hardcover book, nice book, something very interesting. I know a lot of you, and we were talking about the different kind of leatherworking, again, with the axes. I just love these type of books, but this one's especially interesting because there's so many tools in here that help me identify. Some people, you know, write me, say, you know what this tool is? And if I have an inkling, sometimes I look through the book and there'll be 4 or 5 of them in here. So very interesting book, a lot of illustrations, and that's the one. Okay, next up, there's a lot of questions. Like I said, I didn't answer because I just showed you real quick. Let's start with the bottom up. First of all, I did this because I just wanted to experiment. I always want to do this on the bottom of an axe. Get a little bit of kind of decoration, and everybody was saying, did you do that by hand, or how did you do that? Let me show you how I accomplished doing this on the handle. I thought that was pretty interesting. You might want to do it on a hammer handle. Let me show you how. Okay, to do that effect, what I used is a piece of wide painter's tape, you know, the regular blue tape, some wax paper. Wax paper is fantastic. Just take a strip, put it onto the wax paper, and then cut around it with a pair of scissors. Cut around the tape so that it's close. The wax paper is very close. Cut all the way around it until you're just left with what looks like a strip of tape, but it'll be wax on the bottom, just like that. Let me, you know, one of the best fire starters you'll ever find is rolled up wax paper. Try it sometime. Just take a wax paper, roll it up, light this up, and watch how nice and clean that burns. I know a lot of you like cotton balls and Vaseline. I showed that on the channel, but this is really good. Okay, so now you have your tape like this. And what you're going to do is you're going to fold it in half like this, okay? And when you fold it in half like that, you're going to cut on the side. You're going to pinch it here, and you're going to cut. Like, let's say we wanted that design I made. So you're going to cut, remember it's doubled. So you're going to cut in like this, and then bring it around like that, and then up like this. And that's, see that little design that you just have here, like this? Now, there's your little, like, flame tip or whatever. And then what you do is you peel off this wax paper, still leaving it sticky here, and once you peel that off, you put this onto your wood, your handle, your hammer handle, whatever. Now you can make that design whatever you want. You can put diamonds in it, whatever. And now you spray it with your Scout Crafter Red, and then just peel that off, and that leaves that design. So that's how I did that. Next up, a lot of people want to know what the finish was. How do they get the color and the finish on here? Okay, remember, I'm pressed for time with these restorations because I only have, you know, really only a day and a half to get this done between the, you know, having to edit the video and everything. So what I did was, the first thing I did was coat it with gunstock stain, okay? That takes about 6 hours to dry. Put that on, then wipe it down so that now that has a nice color to it. Then it was a little bit lighter, went a little bit darker, so I put 1 coat of amber shellac. That darkens it up a little bit, and it also protects the stain because now that stain isn't fully 100% dry, so that amber shellac dries quickly. Within 2 hours, that's pretty much dry. And then I went over it just before I went to bed. I put on a 1 coat of thinned out, you know how I do that with the varnish, and I wiped it down with thinned out spar varnish. That'll protect it against UV, all that, things like that. So that's how I did that. And then I did the bottom paint over the varnish and everything. That was the last thing I did. So that was how I got that color. Next up, a lot of people really enjoy leather. And I want to do some more tutorials on leather because it's really, I learned it in Scouts, but it's such a fun thing to do. But again, I haven't touched leatherwork in a while, so this was kind of getting back into the groove. And there's a lot of steps to this. I'll show you when we're doing a little bit of leatherwork. But one thing I wanted to point out, a good friend of the show goes by the name of Lupus on the comments, and he said, you know, it looks like you got your snaps backwards. And it's so funny because when I read the comments, I was like, hey, what is that? No way, I don't. And sure enough, I looked over the video, I put it on backwards. And what that means is, there's a male part of the snap and a female. The female should be attached to the top here, and the male should be down here. It's not something that 100% matters, but that's the right way to do it, because when you close this down, it just makes, I think it's easier to find it. But the reason I was getting so screwed up when I was doing that is because I had to take parts. I wanted a nickel snap. I didn't have this is a large one, and I only had smaller ones. I wanted a large nickel snap, so I had to use like the brass rest of it, and then I used the nickel. So that's how I got screwed up when I did it. But thank God I did on both sides so it don't look uneven. But so thanks to Lupus for pointing that out. Next to rivets, a lot of people ask about the rivets. Rivets are a ton of fun to do, and you can see how nice they come out on the back. And they're smooth, and they're strong, and they're inexpensive. Let me show you how you could do those. Now, I was thinking to myself, you know, the copper rivet are beautiful, the copper rivets, and, you know, they're available. You can pick them up. But let's say, and this is something we always did in Scouts, let's say you wanted to do it at home on the cheap. You know, you didn't have that kind of money to buy the rivets, or you wanted to do something quick and easy. I have these are regular roofing nails. You've all seen these before. These happen to be bright galvanized dips, so they're nice looking, right? And you get a small washer, okay? Now, normally this is called a burr. When you have a rivet that slides down, the washer is called a burr, but we can just get a small rivet. This is, I think, 1/8 of an inch hole, and it goes over the shaft of the nail like this. It's a little bit looser than we want, but we're going to peen it over. So we drill the hole, just like you would punch a hole in the rivet. You're going to pass this through like this. We're going to put this over here, cut it down to size, and then we'll peen it over and see if we can't get the same look with that. Now, how much of a shaft you leave out of here, it depends on how much you're going to bang down and peen over. So that's important. Let me show you how I do that. Now, you could use diagonal cutters. You can use any type of cutter you want, but what you do is once you have it here like this, we're going to leave about that much up. You see how much space we have there? We want a little bit of space because we got to peen that over. Now what we're going to do is we're going to squeeze it down a little bit and rotate the cutter as we're squeezing it. Okay, I'm using these end nippers, and I'm rotating it so that we don't get a super sharp cut. Okay, and we're just going to rotate that a little bit. Now it's almost, there we go. Now you see how much we have on there. Now to dome that over, what we're going to do is, I just made a simple tool, which anybody could make. This is nothing more than a cut-off bolt that I had. Just drill a little, you see a little pocket in one end, and then smooth the other end. Take that sharp edge off. So you're going to bang this with a hammer. And we'll peen this over and see what we can get, what it looks like. Now, when you're putting this tool that you made, that little pocket tool on top of the nail, what we're going to do is we're going to tap it with not a heavy hammer, and you want to use light taps and let the peen form naturally. So when I'm hammering, I'm going to tap down and I'm going to turn this as I'm doing. It's going to look something like this. Just like that until you get that dome where you like it. Okay, so here's our poor man's rivet that we made out of a nail, a washer. There's the back side that you would see, the nice side, so to speak, and there's the other side, which don't look bad at all. And you see how we peened that over, right? You see how we peened that over using that tool and a little bit of hammer whacking, and it looks very nice, and it's very solid. You could make a sheath out of these, you know, and that's very inexpensive. You could buy a box of these for a couple $. And those those washers have to be really inexpensive. So the main thing you have to remember is try and get a washer that's very close. The inner diameter of that hole has to be very close to the shaft size of whatever nail you're using. So that's something. Okay, next up, a couple people were asking if I reused the wedge that I pulled out of the handle when I redid this, and I didn't, and I'll show you why. But first of all, it's very important that you get that full service. Remember, you have this eyelet in here, and you have to have a full, this has to be solid. You can't have any gaps whatsoever. If you do, you'll have movement, and that's where you loosen, the head loosens up. But what's really nice is this particular eye on these double bit axes match up very nicely to the handles. That's the way they come. But with a lot of hammers and things like that, once you put this wedge in, you might get it tight this way, but there's always gaps in the edge, and that's when you add the steel wedge here. And the reason you add a steel wedge and not a wood wedge is because once you this is all compressed now. Once you bang in the first wedge, you'll never get another wooden wedge in here because it's too hard now. It's too tight. So that's why the metal wedges go in this way, to separate it and to fill the gaps on each edge. Thank goodness this one was such a tight fit, I didn't need to put any other wedge in. It was just perfect. Every once in a while you get lucky like that. But let me show you the story behind what wedge I used. Now, 2 years ago, a good friend of the show, Ricky McFadden, he goes by, has a great Instagram channel called Back Into Service. And Ricky is, been watching the channel, and he says, hey, John, I got this friend that does wedges by the name of Carl Knox. I'll put his email here. This is Carl's email. And Carl makes wedges. And anyway, Ricky hooked me up with Carl, and Carl sent me some wedges just to show, and he sells like packages of these wedges, different types of wood, because a lot of people that are into rehandling hammers and axes, they do it as kind of an art form. So he makes like these beautiful wedges, like you can see here, the size of them. This one here is obviously, this one's a walnut. Here's honey locust. Here is a red cedar. This is hedgewood, a black locust over here. And sycamore. I use sycamore on that particular hatchet. Now, what's so nice is because that hatchet has such a wide eyelet, these are wide wedges. They're very hard to find wedges this wide. And it just so happens that, Carl had them, and he can make them, I guess, what you want. Carl is, if you're interested in doing some, contact Carl, and, he has a bunch of different packages he could send out. But here's an interesting thing. If you ever get a wedge like, a wide one like this, you measure your eyelet, that, let's say your eye of the hammer is this wide. You cut it down that way, and then you bang it in, then you cut it across. So you can see the taper. Now, you can cut, again, this one here is, I used it on one of the hammers I was doing. I used the bottom, and then I cut this across. Now, I could sand this down, make this sharp again, and use it for another one. That's why you never get rid of these. But very interesting. Check out Ricky and Back Into Service on Instagram. And if you're interested in these wedges, Cole has all different hardwoods that he sells. Wow, that was a heck of a mosh. That went fast for me anyway. I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you again on Friday. Take care now. Bye-bye.